The sound of breaking glass jolted Opiyo awake. Outside, the night was silent, but inside the car, chaos reigned. Get out, all of you! A deep, menacing voice boomed. A masked man waved a gun at them, his silhouette barely visible under the moonlight. The bushes rustled, and more figures emerged. Opiyo's wife Nyakio clutched the youngest daughter, a chain to her chest. Their son Otieno trembled in the back seat. The family had just left their home village after a joyful Christmas. Now they were surrounded by strangers in the middle of nowhere. Don't hurt my children, Opiyo begged, raising his hands. The men didn't respond. They pulled the family out of the car, shoving them toward the dense forest. Nyakio's sobs echoed as the shadows swallowed them whole. 2 weeks earlier, the air in Opiyo's village was filled with the scent of roasted goat and the sounds of laughter. It was Christmas Eve, and the family had arrived in style, their car packed with gifts and supplies. The village children ran toward them, their faces lighting up with joy. Uncle Pio is here, they shouted. Nyakio handed out clothes to the women, while Opio distributed bags of rice and sugar. The villagers were grateful, showering them with blessings. God will protect you, one elderly woman said, gripping Nyakio's hand tightly. Their week in the village was magical. The children played freely, unbothered by the city life's constraint. The nights were filled with stories telling under the stars as the family bonded with relatives. But as the week came to an end, an unease crept into Opio's heart. On the morning of departure, a village elder approached Opiyo. The man's face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp. Son, you have been kind to us, he began, but the roads are not safe. Bandits are ruthless this season. Opiyo stated, we have to leave early to reach the city by nightfall. Don't worry, Baba, we'll be careful. The elder nodded but added, pray before you leave. Evil hides in unexpected places. As they drove off, Opiyo couldn't shake the man's words. The journey began smoothly, with the family singing Christmas songs. Otieno laughed at Acheng's off-key notes and Yakio joined in, her voice warm and melodious. But as they approached a stretch of road bordered by thick forest, the atmosphere grew tense. Papa, there's a truck parked ahead, Otieno said, pointing. Opio slowed down. The truck seemed abandoned, its hazard light blinking. But as he was about to drive around it, two motorcycles rolled out from the bushes, blocking their path. Before Opio could reverse, masked men surrounded the car. The kidnappers pushed the family deeper into the forest. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and the distant sound of crickets. Where are you taking us? Nyakio asked, her voice trembling. Keep quiet, or you will regret it, one of the men snarled. Otieno held his sister's hand tightly, whispering, don't cry, Achien. I'll protect you. Hours seemed to pass before they reached a clearing. A makeshift camp stood in the middle, lit by a single flickering lantern. Sit down, the leader barked, pointing to a dog. As the family sat huddled together, Opio scanned the area. He noticed a young boy not much older than Otieno, tied to a nearby tree. The boy's eyes were wide with fear. Who is that? Nyakio whispered. Opio shook his head, his mind racing. Later that night, as the kidnappers argued over their next move, the young boy managed to inch closer to the family. They will ask for ransom, he whispered, but they don't always keep their promises. What do you mean? Opio asked. They killed my parents, the boy said, tears streaming down his face. Please, don't trust them. Opio's heart sank. He needed to find a way to protect his family, but how could he outsmart handmen in the middle of nowhere? The next morning, one of the kidnappers, a woman, brought the family some water. Unlike the others, her face wasn't covered. Her eyes darted nervously, and she seemed uncomfortable. Drink quickly, she muttered, avoiding their gaze. As she turned to leave, Nyakio whispered, please help us. The woman hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. I can't, she said, her voice barely audible. But Opio noticed something in her hand. She held a necklace, similar to one his wife had given to the villager during their stay. Could she be someone from the village? Opio couldn't take his eyes off the woman. She disappeared into the shadows, but his mind raced. If she was from the village, there might be a chance to reason with her. As the family sat quietly, the kidnappers began discussing their ransom demands. We'll call their family tonight, the leader growled. If they don't pay, we'll deal with them. Opio's heart sank. He had some money, but not enough to meet the kind of demands these men would likely make. That night, the woman returned with a plate of food. She placed it in front of the family and whispered, eat, you'll need your strength. Nyakio grabbed her hand. You are from our village, aren't you? She asked softly. The woman froze, her eyes darting around. Keep your voice down, she hissed. Please, Opiyo said. You know us. Help us get out of here. The woman hesitated, then leaned in closer. I'll see what I can do, but if they catch me, we are all dead. The next day, the woman returned, slipping a small knife to Opiyo while pretending to hand him food. Use this only if you must, she whispered. Tonight I'll create a distraction. What kind of distraction? Opiyo asked. Just be ready, she said before quickly leaving. Nyakio clutched Opiyo's arm. What if it's a trap? She whispered. We don't have a choice, Opiyo replied. If we stay, we might not survive. As the night fell, the family huddled together, their breaths shallow as they waited for something, anything to happen. Around midnight, a loud crackle echoed through the forest. Then flames erupted nearby, spreading quickly. The kidnappers leaped to their feet, shouting in confusion. It's the fire! Get the water! One yelled. Amid the chaos, the woman appeared, cutting the ropes binding the family. Opio grabbed Achieng and Otieno, while Nyakio followed closely. The woman led them through the dense forest, moving quickly but carefully. Where are we going? Nyakio asked breathlessly. There is a small village nearby, the woman replied. We'll be safe there. But as they ran, a gunshot rang around, stopping them in their tracks. Run! The woman shouted, pushing the family forward. Opio didn't look back. He tightened his grip on Achieng's hand, his heart pounding in his chest. The kidnappers were behind them, shouting and firing into the darkness. The forest seemed endless, the trees like towering sentinels blocking their escape. Opio's foot caught on a root and he fell, pulling Achieng down with him. Papa! She cried. Nyakio helped him up, her eyes wide with fear. We can't stop, she urged. The woman led them to a rocky outcrop and gestured for them to hide. Stay here, she whispered. I'll lead them away. Before they could protest, she disappeared into the forest. The family crouched under the rocky outcrop, barely breathing. The kidnapper's voice grew louder, then faded as they followed the woman's trail. Do you think she'll be okay? Otieno whispered. Opio shook his head. I don't know, son, but she gave us a chance. They waited in silence, the forest alive with the sounds of insects and distant rustling. Hours passed before Pio decided it was safe to move. We need to keep going, he said. But where? Nyakio asked. Opio pointed toward the faint glow of the moon. We follow that light. It must lead somewhere. As dawn broke, the family stumbled into a clearing. Before them was a small, quiet village. The huts were empty and the air was thick with unsettling stillness. Where is everyone? Otieno asked, clinging to his mother. Opia approached one of the huts and peered inside. It was deserted, the floor covered in ash and broken pots. This place looks abandoned, Nyakio said, her voice trembling. But as they explored further, they found signs of recent activity. A fire pit still smoldering footprints in the dirt. We can't stay here long, Opio decided. If the kidnappers catch us, we'll be trapped. As the family prepared to leave the village, a frail old man emerged from the shadows of a nearby hut. His eyes were sunken and his voice was barely audible. You shouldn't be here, he said. Please, we are trying to escape, Nyaki explained. Our lives are in danger. The old man shook his head. This place is cursed. Leave before it's too late. What do you mean? Opio asked. Bad men come here, the man whispered. They take everything and everyone. The family exchanged nervous glances. It seemed danger followed them everywhere. The old man reluctantly gave them direction to a nearby town. Follow the river, he said. It will take you there. Thank you, Opio said, helping the man back into his hut. As they set off, the family felt a glimmer of hope. If they could reach the town, they might finally be safe. But the forest was vast, and every sound seemed to echo with danger. The family followed the old man's instructions, trudging along the river bank. The sun rose high in the sky, but its warmth brought no comfort. The river, though serene on the surface, seemed to mock their desperation with its gentle flow. I'm thirsty, Achieng whispered, a small voice breaking the silence. Opio knelt beside her, scooping water with his hands. Drink this, he said softly. Cheno stood alert, watching the forest with a sharpness that was unusual for a boy his age. Papa, he said cautiously. What if they are following us? They won't find us, Nyakio said firmly, though her trembling hands betrayed her fear. But as they continued along the river, Opio noticed something alarming. Footprints in the mud, fresh ones. Someone's been here recently, he muttered. Before anyone could respond, the sound of distant voices floated through the forest. The family froze. The voices grew louder, punctuated by the rustling of leaves and heavy footsteps. Hide, Opio whispered urgently, pulling his family behind a cluster of thick bushes. They crouched low, holding their breaths. Nyakio wrapped her arms around Acheng, who buried her face in her mother's chest. The kidnappers appeared moments later, their face grim with determination. The leader, the man with the scar, backed orders. Search the area. They can't be far. Opio's heart sank as one of the men moved dangerously close to their hiding spot. But just as the man leaned towards the bushes, a loud shout echoed from deeper in the forest. "They are over there!" Someone yelled. The kidnappers turned and ran toward the sound. Opio's family remained frozen, fear coursing through their veins. "Let's move," Opio whispered after a long silence. But as they stood to leave, a pair of hands grabbed Otieno from behind. "Got one," a kidnapper shouted. Yakio's scream pierced the air. Without thinking, she lunged at a man holding her son, scratching and clawing like a wild animal. "Let him go!" she shouted, her voice raw with rage. The kidnapper staggered backward, momentarily stunned. Pio seized the opportunity, grabbing the small knife the woman had given him and slashing on the man's arm. The kidnapper yelped with pain, releasing Otieno, who scrambled to his feet. "Run!" Opio shouted. The family bolted through the forest, their pursuers closing behind them. The sound of rushing water grew louder as they ran. Finally, the trees parted to reveal a wide, sturdy bridge. On the other side, the small town sprawled under the afternoon sun. "There!" Opio shouted, urging his family forward. But as they reached the bridge, the kidnappers burst from the forest. "Stop them!" the leader roared. The family sprinted across the bridge, their legs burning with exhaustion. Just as they reached the other side, a group of armed police officers emerged from the town. "Help us!" Nyakio cried. The officers raised their rifles, aiming at the kidnappers. The men skidded a halt, realizing they were outnumbered. "Drop your weapons," one officer commanded. The kidnappers hesitated, then fled back into the forest. In the safety of the town, the family was taken to a small clinic where a nurse tended to their cuts and bruises. The police promised to investigate the kidnappers, but Opio knew they might never truly be caught. "We are alive," Nyakio said, holding a chain close. "That's all that matters." Otieno sat quietly, staring at the horizon. He had grown in ways no child should ever have to. Opio put his arm around his son. "We are stronger together," he said, "no matter what happens." The family spent the night in the town before being escorted back to the city the next day. Their Christmas celebration had turned into a nightmare, but they carried with them a newfound appreciation for life and each other. As they drove into the bustling city streets, Nyakio whispered a prayer of gratitude. "I'll never take anything for granted again," she said. Though they will never forget the terror they had faced, they knew they had been given a second chance to live, love, and heal. This story is a testament to the unyielding spirit of humanity, the importance of love and courage, and the enduring hope that even in the darkest times, light can be found. It serves as a reminder to value what truly matters: family, community, and life itself. Thank you for watching. Kindly like, subscribe, and share.